What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Frankie D'Astoli Show. I am your host, Frankie D'Astoli. As always, super excited to have you guys here. I had one of those moments yesterday where I was just like, man, I love being a real estate investor, and not necessarily so much for, the returns or for buying the properties or the generational wealth aspect, but for the aspect of just being able to have flexibility with my time, right? And sometimes that comes in the form of, I want to take a random day trip with my wife and daughter, or, I'm going to just end up working from home today and I'm just going to communicate with some of the team members to make sure everything's going smoothly. Or in some cases, like it was yesterday, when I have an emergency, I'm able to be home and not have to tell somebody, hey, I'm having an emergency, and make it seem like I'm making up some sort of fake excuse of why I can't come to work, right? So as you guys probably heard, I'll tell you the story real fast. A couple weeks ago, I got my wisdom teeth out and I was on a full liquid diet, right? And God bless my wife, she totally pivoted the menu and went to pretty much like all like soups and ramen and pastas and anything that's kind of like very, very soft foods. We have a whole surplus of ice pops in the freezer still that we're gonna have to work through in the middle of winter, so that should be fun. But she was making a lot of these kind of liquid things and these soft foods. And 2 days ago, I'm walking downstairs and I'm going to grab the laundry, and I have the washer machine and the dryer machine in my basement, and next to it is like a big cast iron sink, right? And I'm walking downstairs, I'm going to grab the laundry, and the sink is filled to the brim with water, and there's pieces of broccoli floating around in it. And I'm like, what is going on? So I go upstairs, I'm like, hun, did you like flush something down the sink? She goes, yeah, I put the cheddar broccoli soup down there because I was worried if I put it in the garbage and you went to take the garbage out that it would start leaking and you'd be like, oh my goodness. So I'm like, listen, thank you very much for thinking about me. But now we have a totally backed up pipe, right? So I go down there, and at this point, I'm about to go out. One of my lenders is having an end of the year party, so I'm in my button down, I'm in my jeans, and I'm grabbing a Home Depot bucket that I got in the basement, and I'm emptying out this sink, right? I'm putting it in there, submerging it in cheddar broccoli soup water, and pouring it into the yard. And I pretty much like I went out that night. The next morning, I get up and I make some calls, and I have a plumber come by and end up fixing it. And it was really funny. It was actually the first time I had this plumber over. So I live in Jersey. We have all of our rental properties in PA, so I don't really have too many New Jersey plumber contacts. My cousin, one of my best friends, is a master plumber, but he's up in New York. So I was on the phone with him trying to figure it out. I couldn't get, it to work. I went to Home Depot, bought a few of like the snake things, and nothing, it wasn't clearing it. So I had to hire out. But I had this plumber come by. He did a phenomenal job, and he was a really cool dude. He was actually had a great sense of humor. I was telling him as he was snaking out some broccoli and carrots, I was like, oh, my wife made cheddar broccoli soup. And he was like, next time invite me over. And I thought he was really funny. But I was telling him about my portfolio, and it turns out he was like, listen, I do some stuff in PA. And we ended up texting, and now he's going to come replace a hot water heater for us at one of our properties. And hopefully it flourishes to a great business relationship, and hopefully we do a lot of business with him. So shout out to my wife for flushing cheddar broccoli soup down the drain. I got a great plumber out of it. So thank you, honey. But yeah, it was a great day. It was a funny day. And we're sitting here, we're getting close to Christmas. And I talk a lot about Advent and the preparation and coming of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And us Catholics, we have a lot of things that kind of go on during the season of time, right? And there's awesome stuff going on in my house. My daughter's got a little Advent calendar. She sticks on the camel and the angels and all of that stuff. My wife and I have been reading the Gospel of Luke. It's 24 chapters. It leads up to Christmas. So there's a lot of great stuff. And whether if you've been doing Advent stuff or not, I highly encourage it. So if you haven't, definitely do it next year. But with Christmas coming, it's really, really important for us Catholics to get to Mass, guys. Make sure, I know we have a lot going on. I know the holidays are crazy. My wife and I were talking about it. We're going to be up all night on Christmas Eve, wrapping all these gifts and all of that stuff. We're going to be traveling. We're going to her parents on Christmas Eve, my parents Christmas Day. But make sure you carve out time to go to Mass, to receive the Blessed Sacrament, and to really celebrate the reason of Christmas, right? Which is the coming of our Lord and Savior Jesus. It's his birthday. That's what we should be selling. It's Christ Mass, right? Get to Mass on Christmas, right? So make sure we're doing that. And the other day, my wife was listening to a podcast called St. Anthony's Tongue. I've listened to it a couple times. Phenomenal. There's some really good stuff on there. But she was listening to this one episode where the podcaster was talking about the visions from Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich on the nativity, on the birth of Jesus Christ. And I started listening to the episode and I found it really, really interesting. And I said, you know what? I think I'm going to make a podcast on it, breaking it down, because the narrator in the podcast here, he reads it in full. It's a 30-minute podcast. He reads the vision in full. So I was a little bit inspired. I woke up this morning. I listened to it again. I started jotting down some notes. I have the printout. I'm going to go through it. And on Christmas Day, I'm going to drop that episode. It's going to be my breakdown of the visions from St. Catherine Anne, St. Anne Catherine, on the nativity, the birth of Jesus, and what it really entails, right? And what that was like. So she was very descriptive. She's seen all of this stuff that was going on. And I really want to encourage you guys to listen to that on Christmas Day, right? Really, really use that time. I assume the episode's probably going to be anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour tops. Take some time to listen to it. It's going to be great for everybody. You know, if you have kids, I'm sure it'll be a really good thing for them to hear as well. But really, when I first heard it, and especially when I started diving into it a little bit more, what I think it's going to be really, really great for is for husbands, for fathers, for wives, for mothers, for aspiring husbands and wives, for aspiring mom and dads. I think it's going to be fantastic, because although it all boils down to the birth of Jesus Christ and the way that the child is delivered from Mary, what I really captured from it is the relationship between Mary and Saint Joseph, how their marriage dynamic is, and what his roles are as a man in that situation, and what she has as a woman who supports his journey to find them a place so that she could deliver deliver the Son of God. And I was really moved by it. I was really moved by it, and after hearing it, it makes me want to be a better man. It makes me want to be a better husband, be a better father, and it just makes me really appreciative for the relationship that I have. And I'm very, very excited to get into that. So I do hope that you guys take some time. That's going to drop on Christmas Day. 6 a.m. That's when all the episodes drop, any day that they are released. So I hope that you guys give it a listen. But today, I'm feeling a lot like Santa, and I got my little Santa mug here if you're watching on the video. And the reason why I feel a lot like Santa is because I'm going to talk about what the greatest gift that a real estate investor could have, and it is other people's money. Yep, that's right. As a real estate investor, the greatest gift that we could receive is other people's money. And today I am going to talk about the two forms of other people's money. I'm going to talk about good debt versus bad debt, and I'm going to talk about how you can go out and acquire other people's money and use it to buy real estate and to even scale a portfolio. So I'm very excited. I hope that you guys are excited for this one as well. And without further ado, we're going to get into it. So other people's money, also referred to as OPM. So if you hear OPM, that's what it stands for. And what I want you guys to know is, we talked about on the last episode, is about leverage, right? So leverage is one of the main reasons why I buy real estate. I could buy an asset, a real estate, a property for $100,000, and I could bring 20,000, 10,000, 5,000, in some cases, no money down, yet I will own and control that property that's worth 100 grand, right? So that is the concept of leverage. You can't do that in stocks. If you go buy a stock for $100, you need to pull out of your pocket $100 to pay for that stock. That's one of the biggest differences between investing in real estate and other asset classes, and one of the main reasons why I invest in real estate. So when you think of leverage, and you think of utilizing other people's money to buy properties, there's a few different things that you're going to think on. You're going to think of banks, right? So typical, you go buy a house that you're going to live in, you might have to put 20% down, right? And again, we talked about that, of why I wouldn't do that. But again, that's an option, right? But what that means is the bank, who is a person in a sense, right, will lend you 80% of the purchase price. Then you have other lenders as well. We're going to cover these on the episode. Hard money lenders, which are usually some sort of organization or an entity, and they'll lend you money at higher interest rates, but they'll base it off of different factors. And then you also have private money lenders, right? Which are people that could be your family, that could be your friends, that could be business associates, other people in the real estate business that are willing to lend you money on specified terms on their end that'll help you buy properties, right? And again, all utilizing other people's money is what this is going to be talking about. So my goal on this is to give you guys as much information as I can on banks, on hard money lenders, on private money lenders. Ultimately, at the end of this episode, my goal is going to be to show you how to buy a property with no money out of pocket. That's what I'm going to push for. But if you are brand new to real estate, I just want you to really focus on just letting this kind of flow over you. right? Let it wash over you. Don't feel like you need to capture every term. Don't feel like you need to totally understand how to do this and what that loan product is like and how to go about getting it. I don't want you to worry too much about that. I want you to just let it wash over you. And when you have some time, listen to it again with your notebook or your laptop and take down some notes that you feel are important. If you are a seasoned real estate investor, a lot of this stuff is probably going to sound very, very familiar to you. But hopefully, my goal is that I could put out some creativity for you that you might end up utilizing to go buy your next investment deal. So, again, we're going to talk about banks. We're going to talk about all that stuff. But one term that I want to talk about is good debt versus bad debt, right? And this is something that's probably familiar to a handful of us. But if you aren't familiar with this, well, the first time that I heard this was when I read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. And if you haven't read that, I highly recommend it. But he talks about good debt versus bad debt. Now, bad debt is money that is debt that pulls money out of your pocket every single month, right? So imagine you pull out a credit card for $10,000 and you go spend $5,000 on furniture, on clothes, and on food, let's just say, for whatever reason. Every single month, you're going to have at least a minimum payment for what that interest is, right? So you're going to have to pay, $150 a month, $100 a month, whatever it is, every single month. It's pulling money out of your pocket. The stuff that you bought was stuff that doesn't put money into your pocket. You didn't go buy assets. You bought, liabilities or, regular things that you need on a daily basis, whatever the case is. The opposite of that is good debt. Now, good debt is still debt, right? It's other people's money. It's money that was lended to you, but you utilize that money, you utilize that debt to buy things that will send you money to pay off that debt and then some, right? And the biggest thing on this is real estate, right? That's why I constantly emphasize leverage, using other people's money. But let's just say you went to a bank and you got a loan for $100,000 and you went and you bought a house and your payment on that loan every single month was $1,000, but that house is bringing you $1,500 a month in rental income. Now you're paying off that debt, that $1,000 a month payment that you have, and you're making $500 on top of that. Good debt. You've leveraged debt. You've leveraged other people's money to put money into your pocket. And that's how it's looked at, right? So that's the difference between good debt and bad debt. Now, personally, guys, this might sound crazy. I'm in $2 million worth of debt. However, it's good debt. It's debt that puts money into my pocket every month because I have tenants that are in the properties paying down the debt that I have and then paying extra on top of that goes into my account every month, right? So again, not saying to go out there and jump in and go in $2 million in debt, right? That's not what I'm saying, but I'm trying to get you guys to understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. You don't want bad debt, right? Bad debt's going to pull money out of your pocket every month. Good debt is going to put money in your pocket every month. And one thing I will say, guys, everything I say, I'm not a loan broker, right? I'm not a loan officer. I'm not an attorney. There's going to be a few things that I throw out here. I'm definitely not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. So for anything that I say, I want you guys to just understand that it's from my experience. It's from things that I've experienced, things that I live every single day. Don't take it as any legal advice or financial advice, right? Everything that you should do, you should talk with your advisors on beforehand. But when we talk about debt, I also want you to understand one other concept. There's long-term debt and there's short-term debt. Now, for the sake of the episode, short-term debt is going to be 6 to 12 months. Long-term debt is going to be 15 years or 30 years. Those are the two concepts, right? So you have long-term debt versus short-term debt. So the first form of other people's money is the general leverage you'll receive from a conventional bank, right? So a conventional bank, think Chase, think Wells Fargo. You go to them and you say, hey, I want to buy a house. They're going to turn around and they're going to say, cool, let's get you qualified. Let's go through all the terms and then we'll determine how much money we could give you, right? And there's a lot of different loan products that you could use, which we're going to break down. But the most common one that everybody thinks on is just a conventional loan where you're going to bring 20% down. Now, I could still use this as an example. Let's say you buy a house worth $100,000 and you go and you use a conventional 20% down loan. You are still using other people's money, right? On the very, very basis, on the surface level, you are still using other people's money because the bank is going to give you $80,000 for that house and you're only going to have to put down $20,000. That's still using other people's money. But as real estate investors, we like to get even more creative. We like to really maximize how we do these things. So, but for the sake of understanding that, that's how it goes. Now, when you do this, the bank, however, is going to look at a few different things, right? They're going to look at you as the person. And this is really important when we're differentiating between banks and hard money lenders and private money lenders. The bank is going to want to know, okay, so Bobby, you're asking me for a loan for, $80,000 to buy this $100,000 property. I want to know what your credit score is. I want to know how much money you have in reserves. I want to know what your job looks like. I want to get, your past, your 2 years of tax statements so I can see what kind of income you have. I want to know all of those things, right? And the bank, when you go buy a house, they are going to look at you. And that's one thing, you might be totally fine, right? You might be like, look, I got a 740 credit score. I have a great job. I make, $100,000 a year. I would totally qualify this, and that's totally great, right? So that is still a way that you could utilize other people's money. Now, banks also have some other loan products that you could utilize, right? You could use what's called FHA loans, which I talked about in, I think it was last episode or 2 episodes ago, which is where it's a low down payment loan, 3.5% to 5%. VA loans, right? So if you're a veteran, if you served in the military, first and foremost, thank you for your service. But you could go buy a house for 0% down. VA loans are 0% down. And then there's other forms of loans that are in the conventional realm where you could pay, 5 to 15% down. Now, when you get into those lower down payment loans, a lot of times the difference is they're going to require you to occupy the property. So you might be in a position as a real estate investor where you might say, hey, look, I have a house already. I have a family. I'm not trying to uproot them and put them in some sort of multifamily or some sort of boarding house type situation. I'm not able to go live in this property, so I can't take advantage of some of these low down payment loans. And that just might be a situation that you're in. But if you are someone who maybe you want a house hack, you want to go buy that multifamily house, live in one unit, rent out the others, conventional banks offer some really good loan products where you could utilize other people's money, get into these houses with low down payments, and start building a real estate portfolio, start building some wealth, right? But for the instance of, let's say you don't have those things, as I mentioned, the banks are going to be looking at you, right? So regardless of what type of loan product you're going to take that on, but there is some other loan products within the banks, the bigger banks, that they won't look at you. And one of them is called a DSCR loan. And again, if you are brand new to this, don't feel like you need to inherit everything I'm saying here. But for some of us, more experienced guys, you probably have some experience with some of this stuff. So a DSCR loan stands for debt service coverage ratio loan, right? And what that means is they're going to look at the asset itself and they are going to value it based off of the rents that are coming in. So this is strictly for rental properties, right? So if you are trying to flip a house, you're not able to use a DSCR loan. If you were still going to go through a conventional, a bank process, you would just use a straight conventional bank loan. But I'll explain why that's not the most advantageous thing to do if you were to flip a house. But if you were a rental investor, so let's just use an example of this. Let's just say you're someone who's listening and you live in New York and you want to invest in Ohio. Let's just say you were on Zillow or an agent or somebody that lives in Ohio and they said, hey, I found this deal and it's a duplex. It's bringing in $2,000 a month. Each unit's bringing in $1,000 a month and it's listed for $100,000 and it's in great shape, right? It doesn't need anything. You as an out-of-state investor might want to use what's called a DSCR loan on this particular house because the bank is going to look at the house and they're going to say, how much money is it generating in revenue? So if each unit is bringing in $1,000, it's generating $2,000 in revenue. The next question that they ask is, what is the PITI? Now, the PITI stands for principal payment, interest, taxes, and insurance, right? So if you buy this house for $100,000, how much is the principal? What's the interest that's going to be tacked on top of that? How much is the taxes every month? How much is the insurance every month? And that's going to wrap up a number. And if you're generating $2,000 a month in income, and let's just say, for instance, that, number spits out $1,500, that gives you a ratio, right? And every bank's ratio is a little bit different, but usually they're looking for about a 1.2 ratio. So I'll break it down even more simpler. Let's just say that payment, interest, taxes, and insurance was $1,000 and you were generating at a minimum $1,200 in rent. It would pass the DSCR ratio. And that is one of the main, if not the main factor that these banks will look at when they're lending on a DSCR loan. Now, they might still want to see a credit score. They might still want to see some reserves. So you'll want to make sure that you're in, relatively the green area for those. But that is the one time, at least in my experience, there might be some other products out there that I'm unaware of. And if you know them, please send them over to me, where a bank will look at the asset mainly as the main factor rather than you. And that's something that you want to really understand and differentiate. Now, when you go get these loans, right? So any of these loans, the conventional loans, the FHA loans, the VA loans, the DSCR loans, anything through those banks, most of the time they are on the long-term debt. They're on the 15-year debt or the 30-year debt mortgages, right? And most of the time, aside from an FHA 203K loan, which I talked about in an episode or two ago, they're not going to give you money for the renovation. right? So let's just say you went and you put 5% down conventional and you bought a house and you were going to occupy that property. You wouldn't necessarily be able to get the renovation budget from the bank, right? Or if you did a DSCR loan, you can't go and say, hey, well, I want to put $25,000 into this property. Can I get that money from you? The bank won't lend it to you. So that's one of the downsides with working with some of these bigger banks is if you're going to do a fix and flip type product, or you're going to add some value to your home before you rent it out, you're most of the time not going to be able to really utilize these bank products, right? That's really probably the biggest downside of a lot of this, aside from the fact that most of the time they base it off you rather than the asset. So now you're saying to yourself, well, listen, I need to do renovations on these properties, right? Personally, as a real estate investor who burrs a lot of deals, buys, rehabs, rents, refinances, and repeat, I need to renovate those houses, right? That's super, super important to me. So that's how I add value, right? That's how I force appreciation. That's how I make the house worth more. And then I could sell it for a profit, or I could tap into the equity and put that in my pocket. So that's really where you want to start looking to some of these more short-term lending options, right? Those hard money lenders and those private money lenders. And the hard money lenders and private money lenders, their terms are usually shorter. They're usually between 6 to 12 months. And the reason that is because they are in the short-term investment business when it comes to lending on real estate. They understand that you as the investor are going to buy that house. You're going to put work into it. You're going to renovate it. And then you are either going to refinance on it and put it on longer term debt, that 30-year, that 15-year mortgage, or you're going to sell it and you're going to get them paid back. Regardless, they're going to get paid back in a shorter period of time. And they're going to inherit a little bit more risk because you're going to renovate those properties, but they're willing to give you the renovation budget as well. And that is really, really important, right? So let's talk a little bit about hard money lenders. Hard money lenders are usually another entity. They're usually another organization. Most of the time, they're relatively well known. They lend in a lot of different areas. They have a good amount of money coming in that they can lend out. But usually their terms are going to be different from a conventional loan, right? Because understand, they're inheriting more risk. They're now including renovation budgets in there. And one other thing, guys, is they base it off the asset. And that's one thing I'll talk about, right? So now, again, with those DSCR loans where they were based off the asset, hard money lenders, majority of the time, are going to base their lending criteria off the asset itself. But let's talk a little bit about their terms first. So usually, let's just say for argument's sake, you have a $100,000 property that you're purchasing. They're usually going to charge 1 to 2 points on loan origination, right? And loan origination, which pretty much means that if the house is worth $100,000, they're going to charge you, if it's 1 point, $1,000. If it's 2 points, it's $2,000 just for generating the loan itself, right? That's kind of like their upfront cost to get the thing started. They're then going to charge you an interest rate, right? And your monthly payments most of the time are just interest only payments, but the interest rate is higher. It's usually 11 to 12% at this time, right? And we're in, towards the back end of December. That could change, right? Those interest rates could go higher, they could go lower, just as interest rates on a daily basis or a monthly basis, quarterly basis change within the conventional realm. They change in hard money as well. So you might be saying, man, 11 or 12% is really high compared to a conventional loan where I'm getting 7%. And there's absolute truth to that. But the difference is hard money lenders, they are in the business to make a higher return than if they just put money into a stock market. And they're also inheriting more risk because you are taking on this house that needs renovations. They're relying on you to get them paid back in a short period of time. So they're going to have higher interest rates. As we mentioned, they tend to have shorter loan terms, right? 6 to 12 months usually. 12 months is really like the average for hard money lending. But one of the beauties is they get to wrap that renovation budget into the loan, right? So again, if you were going to go buy a house for $100,000, and it needed $50,000 worth of work, most hard money lenders will give you the full amount. They'll give you the full $50,000 to do on that project, which is so, so clutch because it takes another area where you need to have to go out and find that money. It's now already baked into your loan amount, which is awesome. Usually they'll require you to bring some money to the table though still, right? So, and again, we're going to talk about how to do this with no money. I plan on getting to that. But most hard money lenders are still going to require you to put some money down to put a little bit of skin in the game, right? And usually the way that it works is the more deals that you do with a particular hard money lender, the more track record you have, the less that money amount to the table each time becomes, right? So if this is your first deal, a hard money lender might say you need to put 20% down. I've even seen 25% down in some cases, right? So you might say, cool, I have a $100,000 property. I need to bring $20,000, to the table. The hard money lender is going to give you $80,000. But the beautiful thing is the hard money lender is also going to give you the $50,000 for the renovation budget that you need, right? And that's something that you don't get at a conventional bank. And again, the more that you do, the lower that amount's going to be. When my partner and I first started out, we were at that 20%. Now that we have such a great track record, but we're still with hard money, it's still 10%. So even us, we're not at 0% fully at that point yet. But when it comes to hard money lenders, we're at that 10% realm most of the time. Hard money lender guidelines. So as I talked about, they really base it off the asset. So if you bring the deal to them and you say, hey, the purchase price is 100 grand, the renovation budget is $50,000, it's going to be worth 250 on the back end. You show them comparables. They usually will send out some appraiser that's, they'll look at the deal, they'll, kind of analyze it, and then they'll give their stamp of approval. That's actually a positive for you as an investor because that gives you a little bit of reassurance. Somebody else looked at my deal. They ran some numbers on it as well. They think it checks out. They're willing to lend on it, right? But most of the time, they're going to base it off the asset itself. They usually still want to see some sort of credit score, though. They're going to want to see, in my opinion, it's been around that 650 plus range. So you'll want to make sure you still keep a decent credit score. And they might also want to see some money in reserves, right? You might want to just be able to show that you can make 6 months worth of interest payments and stuff like that. Again, all hard money lenders are different in some of their guidelines, but that's how they typically run. The beautiful thing with hard money is most of the time these guys close between 21 to 30 days. So that's awesome for these off-market deals that, are more of these cash deals where you might be competing with some cash buyers. Having a hard money lender that's able to lend on your deal is really, really awesome because it still keeps that close time window very, very small, which is awesome. So that's really hard money. If you're asking kind of how do you find hard money lenders, they're all over the place, guys. Truthfully, there really are. Simple things, as I always say, go to meetups, talk to other real estate investors, see who they're using for hard money, post in Facebook groups. You're going to find them very, very quickly. I can assure you that. Let's get to the next thing. Let's get to private money lenders, right? So now we're moving kind of into a new realm. And when you think of private money lenders, I want you guys to think of family. I want you to think of friends. I want you to think of business associates. I want you to think of other people that are in real estate. And really with private money lenders, their guidelines are all different because it depends on the individual, right? So private money lenders typically are going to be more so an individual or maybe a small entity. They don't usually have as much. I don't want to say necessarily that they don't have as much money as hard money lenders because you might run into a private money lender that has a lot of money, but they're usually not throwing their money out in a ton of real estate deals like hard money lenders are. So their guidelines are really what they request, right? They tend to be a little bit more flexible with terms and will base their they'll base their assessment off of the risk on the asset usually and also on you. And there are some hard money lenders that will lend 100% of the deal, right? But again, it all depends on what they request, right? So you might have a hard money lender that wants really like nothing in the aspect of lending, right? They might just say, hey, let's just pretend it's a family member. Let's say, hey, it's Aunt Rita, right? Aunt Rita's got $50,000 sitting in her account. And she's like, cool, Joey, I want you to go make a return on this money for me. I'm going to give you $50,000 and you go do your thing. And in 6 months, just bring me back $53,000, something like that, right? Whereas you might have another private money lender who might say, hey, listen, I want all of these loan docs signed. I want, a part of the equity in the deal. I want to be on the operating agreement. I want, a 10% interest rate. I want 3 points up front. It really could vary depending on the person. And I have a few private money lenders that I work with, and they all vary on their rates, right? Like some of them are higher. They're going to charge you 3 points up front. They're going to charge you 13% interest rate. They're going to put you on short-term loans, 6 months, because they want to, recycle that money. Their velocity of money is really important to them. And then I have other private money lenders that are a little bit more lenient. They're 1.5 points, 9%, 12-month terms. All of this, again, it all varies depending on that individual person. And this is all stuff that the beauty of it actually is, though, is it's negotiable. Most of the time, right? Now, if you run into a private money lender who is relatively established, they might say, hey, look, I have a handful of people that I lend to. This is what it is. But usually if you're talking to friends, if you're talking to family members, talking to other people that maybe are in real estate, you can negotiate some of these terms with them, which is really, really awesome. Again, if you are thinking about lending money, or if you are going and requesting money from people, make sure to bring your attorney involved. Guys, I'm not an attorney. Please, please, please understand that. Anytime that I use private money lending, I have loan docs that are signed. They are prepped by attorneys, all of that stuff. So, but again, private money lenders is really the cream of the crop. And like I had mentioned, there are some people out there that will lend 100% of the deal. And I have, at this point, 3 of those people for me that will lend 100% of the deal. And that has been super, super critical in scaling my portfolio so fast. And some of you guys might be thinking, oh my goodness, like that's why he's got so many properties. But what I will say is I didn't have them at first. These were relationships that were cultivated, that were developed, that were nurtured over time. So when I first came in, as you guys have probably heard my story, I bought my first house hack. I used an FHA 203K loan, low down payment, was able to wrap my renovation budget in it. It was a duplex. My wife and I lived in the bottom unit. We rented out the top. The second house that I purchased was with a hard money loan. It was the short-term loan. It was a 12-month term. My partner and I, that was our first house that we got. We put 20% down on that property. We bought that house. That's how it all started. The third house that I purchased was this new primary that I lived in, 5% down, conventional loan. And then the fourth property that we purchased was also a hard money loan. Again, at that point, we were getting 15% down because we were showing a little bit of a track record. Then we ended up getting a portfolio of 4 properties using creative finance, which I'll have to make a whole nother video about. But at this point now, we have a handful of properties between my partner and I. We end up linking up with a few private money lenders. One of them came from a relationship that we had in real estate. He ended up giving us his number. We ended up taking him out for coffee. We take him out for coffee. The first deal that we sent him, he didn't want to lend on with us. He still was kind of establishing our relationship a little bit. We ended up having to take him out again, and then he landed on our deal. It ended up going really well, and that's how the relationship ended up blossoming. And from there, he introduced us, that private money lender introduced us to one of the other private money lenders in his kind of inner circle. And now we have that connection as well. And that's how these things kind of start to cultivate. And that's what makes it, it's not automatic. It's very, very hard to go out and just say, hey, I've never done a deal before. Lend me 100% of the purchase price and the renovation budget. Most people are not going to be comfortable doing that, right? So it's really important to establish a track record to show the returns that you're making to these investors and to really understand their motivation as well, guys. And keep that in mind when you have a lender, whether it's a private money lender or whether it's a hard money lender, right? Or even banks, everybody wants to get paid. Everybody wants to make a return. You guys are all on the same team. And that's really, really important to continue to keep in mind. So whenever we do a deal with our private money lenders, it's never like, hey, like they're sending us money. We need to perform. Like there's so much going on. Like we're feeling a lot of pressure. It's always like, hey, cool. We looked at this deal together. We talked this out. We all feel it's a really good investment. Like, let's go in there. Here's our game plan. We're going to execute. We're going to make sure that we make them money. We're going to make sure we make money. We're all going to have a win-win scenario. And this is how we're going to do it. Right. And that's really where you want to be. And that's how you get there. But it takes time to cultivate those relationships. And again, one other thing that I will say, and I know I continue to preach to the choir about this, go out to meetups and remember this, guys. You are a walking brand. Everywhere you go, you have the opportunity to talk about who you are and what you do, especially at meetups. That's what they're meant for. They're meant for networking. They're meant for getting in front of people, talking about what you guys do and how you guys can work together. So when you go to these places, if you are in the business already, right, make sure you go and you have business cards. Make sure you talk about the types of deals that you're doing, the returns that you're seeing, because you're going to end up running into those people that are looking to make money. And they might be people who are just as invested in real estate as you are, or people who aren't because of whatever the reason is, and they might be looking to just deploy some capital so that they can make a return. So keep that in mind. That's really, really important. The last thing I'm going to end on today is we're going to talk about combining some methods and how you guys could bring a deal together with no money out of pocket, right? So again, when you get into the realm of some private money and you have people that are willing to fund 100% of your deal, it's really awesome, right? And usually most of the time, it doesn't always happen. They might not necessarily always have the money, so you might have to pivot to hard money and stuff like that. But let's just say you don't have those contacts just yet, but you don't have a lot of money to put down on a property either. And you're kind of saying, well, how do I get into real estate, right? And there's a lot of creative finance ways, which we won't talk about on this particular topic, such as seller financing, subject to, jumping into an agreement with an existing landlord, stuff like that. But what we're going to talk about is, let's just say, for argument's sake, you find a deal that you really like. And again, I'm using $100,000 as just round number purpose. And you bring that deal to a hard money lender and they say, hey, this is our first deal with you. We need you to bring $20,000. We need 20% up front to show skin in the game. And you might not have that $20,000, right? A few things that I want you to automatically think on is, number one, like, do I want to bring on a partner? Do I want to bring on a partner where, yeah, I'm going to have to split some of the equity in this deal, but if I bring on a partner, maybe they could bring the money and I will do the groundwork, right? And that's like a really, really great way to get into real estate. And again, sometimes when bringing on partners, like I mentioned in my last episode, you want to make sure you guys have the same long-term vision. You want to make sure that you guys are going to be in this together. Now, if you're flipping a house, it might be for a shorter term, but if you plan on buying and hold it, you want to make sure that you guys are on board on what your plan is and what the strategy is there. But if you're in a situation where you have a deal, it's a really good deal, and you have to bring someone to the table, you might want to bring on a partner. Now, let's just say you don't want to bring on a partner. What you can do is you can go out and you could seek a private money lender for that $20,000. And why this is so important is because a lot of private money lenders, if you're bringing them this first deal and you say, hey, look, I'm getting this deal for $100,000, it needs $50,000 worth of work. Can I get $150,000 from you? And they say, hey, show me what you've done in the past. and you don't have anything to show them, they're not going to most likely be willing to lend on it, right? Or if you're not, even still, you might go to them and they might still be requesting some money down. So when you bring now this $20,000 to some potential lenders, now it's a lot smaller of an amount than the full amount for the property and the renovation, right? Now, a few things change with that. If they were to lend on it, and this is a little getting in the weeds, they're not in necessarily like a first lien position, which means if things went south, they might not necessarily be the first one that gets paid. But this is a great opportunity to bring to some people that maybe want to, dabble a little bit in real estate. They kind of, maybe they know you, they know who you are, they understand who you are, they respect you, they appreciate, they're comfortable with you. That's the best word that I could use for that. And it's a way for them to kind of partner up with you in a smaller sense. And then if you do well and you deliver them a return on their investment, then they might want to partner up with you on a bigger sense, right? And that $20,000 that you go grab from, Aunt Rita, eventually on the next one might turn to $100,000 or whatever the case is, right? So think about it in that perspective. Start combining a few of these things together. I could go get a hard money loan. Can I then raise some private money to just fill that gap of what I need to bring down to the closing table? And my partner and I did this with my cousin. He's in Staten Island, right? He's in New York. He lives out of the area. He's not in the area, but he wants to invest in real estate. We couldn't use our private money lender on this particular deal at this time. We had one of them. He was tied up with some of his other capital movements. So we ended up getting a hard money loan. We still needed to bring, at this point now, we need to bring 10% down on our hard money loans. So we still needed to bring it was like $11,000 to the table on this deal. And we went to my cousin who wanted to invest in real estate, but was out of state. It was harder for him to do. And we said, hey, you could be a partner on this deal with us. We'll give you a return every single month once we have it rented out and it's renovated. We're just requesting the down payment money and the monthly installment payments for the next 6 months. If you could do that, you're in the deal with us and we'll get you a return on it. And that's exactly how we've raised that money, right? So that's just one example of how you could, really operate so you come to the table with no money out of pocket, even if you don't have those lenders that are willing to lend you 100% of the deal and are lending you hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So I hope that you guys find that somewhat helpful. As I always say, if you guys have any questions whatsoever, please DM me on Instagram, Frankie D'Astoli _REI. I'm always checking my DMs. I love answering. I love helping in any way that I possibly can. And if you have any ideas of what some stuff that you guys want to hear on the shows in the future, please send that over as well. But the biggest thing is if you're brand new to this, like I said, take it with a grain of salt, right? Just start asking around, start talking to some lenders, see what they offer, see how it goes, get a feel for what it's like to have to go out and receive lending on a deal. And if you're in the business and you're looking for those private money lenders, really start putting together your documents, right? Show people like, hey, like this is the deal that I did. I did this deal 6 months ago. We bought this deal, we renovated it, we flipped it, we made this amount of profit. Or we renovate it and we rent it out every month and we've been able to pay off our lenders within 6 months and now we make X amount in return. If this is something that you're interested in, like please let me know. I'd love to, utilize your capital and make you a return on these investments as well. All of that stuff, guys. And again, last thing I will say, always talk to an attorney, always talk to an accountant. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. All I do is I buy houses and I pray the rosary every day. So make sure you pray your rosary, make sure you buy houses. And I look forward to talking to you guys on the next one. Peace out.